Hi, it's Eddie Hazzard here for part two of our conversation about the dangers of your cell phone. As you can see, I was so taken back I had to change clothes, both of us. She changed, so we're here different. And we're going to begin part two with Neha Kumar, who informed you of our first show of what was going on. And we're going to begin part two here now. And Neha, tell us a little bit about our part two. And we talked about your radiation machine here. It's not an RT, but
RF.
RF. I keep saying RT, and like I said before, I have a PS education, so it's not RF. So tell us, as you did before, finish up on explaining about
Of
your
course. So
device.
first of all, thank you so much for having me once again.
You're very welcome.
And
very welcome.
So cell phone radiation and cell phone tower radiation is definitely there are a lot of people who are complaining of health problems. And so this radiation monitor that you're just referring to came into existence when people, I think last time I mentioned to you that the traditional equipments that, the sophisticated equipments would cost something like $50,000, which a common person could not afford. So we came up with this Detects, which was easy, simple to use, which even a 5-year-old boy or girl could use. And it has, it's just for it was less than $100. So that a common, yes, and the idea was basically so that any common person could use radiation and understand from health perspective if the radiation in their house is safe or not. So the green over here indicates that it is safe for 24/7 exposure.
And it's on. The green light is on.
Exactly. And the yellow over here, we are in the green room and there is some radiation over here. Plus we have some microphones, so which is why I think it's yellow over here, which means it is on caution side. And if it was on the red side, that means that it is danger radiation. Now, again, this one is based on the health impacts. It's not based on the government guideline, because the government guideline is exceptionally high.
True.
In fact, so it's something like the guideline is exceptionally high. According to them, everything is in the safe zone.
Yeah.
In fact, when we did a calculation, the ICNIRP guideline.
What is the IC? What is it again?
It's not. It's ICNIRP. International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection.
Wow.
So this is a group that has set basically guidelines, and these guidelines were back in the late 1990s.
Oh.
And 90% of the countries still adopt these guidelines. And if you look in the fine print, those guidelines are only for 6 minutes per day usage.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And in fact, those guidelines have been, which is 4,500 milliwatt per meter square. That's the guideline number for, say, GSM 900. Okay,
crazy.
And that guideline has been adopted by 90% of the countries throughout the world for 24/7 exposure.
Wow.
Now, what is implemented for what the guidelines say is that it's safe for 6 minutes per day with a safety factor of 3 to 4. You cannot implement that for 24/7 round the clock.
That's true.
Right? And so right now the guidelines are so high. So as I mentioned, it's 4,500 milliwatt per meter square. What your cell phone requires for proper communication is 0.6 zeros and 1 milliwatt per meter square. So there's 10 to the power 10 billion times more radiation guideline than what your cell phone requires. So that's the kind of guideline that the government has adopted.
Why do you think they did that?
That is exceptionally high, exactly, which is why when the telecom companies transmit any amount of radiation, it generally tends to be lesser than the ICNIRP guidelines.
Yeah.
So they say that they are safe. But that's not really safe from health point of view. So this one is from the health point of view. So from health point of view, it's 0.1 milliwatt per meter square for 24/7 exposure. And this guideline has been set up by the Bio-Initiative report. In 2007 and 2011, they came up with another one. It has been prepared. It has more than 2,000 references from peer-reviewed publications by a group of researchers around the world, and they have said that 0.1 milliwatt per meter square is what is safe from health point of view.
Right.
And this is what is based on the health point of view. And I've been doing this radiation research for over 17 years now. And in fact, we also kind of have realized over the time that I've been doing measurements, that 0.1 actually is safe, in fact. So it's so that's.
Well, there you go.
Yes, exactly.
Have you reached out to the government, or has the government talked to you about that?
Oh, yes. So we basically I started working this back in 2009. At that kind of time when I wrote some reports, research papers, and was interacting with the government and telecom companies, definitely there was a lot of setback. But then they said there is no conclusive evidence. So I came up with another report with more than 200 references from peer-reviewed publication that I sent to the Department of Telecommunication in India. And they, in fact, after I think there was a lot of back and forth, and there was a lot of pressure from people around in the country,
Right.
and there were a lot of people who were having health problems. And finally, the government did agree to reduce the radiation guidelines
Wow.
to 1/10. So now the Indian guidelines are now, instead of 4,500, it's now 450 milliwatt per meter square. So which is good on paper, because they say it's 10% reduction, but that 450 is still very, very high from health point of view, and the telecom companies did not have to do anything because they were already within that guideline.
Oh my goodness, it's crazy. Well, we have some facts and figures here we're going to show in a second here. There we go. And
Right. So all I wanted to point out over here is that the vertical tube light like structures that you see, these are the cell phone tower antennas that are installed on residences, on
these are
office
people's
tops.
houses?
Exactly.
Apartments? That's
Exactly.
crazy.
On apartments, it can be, it's on, on highways, and the problem is if it's, or sometimes they would be on a pole and they would have multiple antennas. Now, if it's on a pole and there are no, residences close to the cell phone tower antenna, it's still better because it's not directly in line of sight of people living close to the tower. But then the problem comes in situations like these, when there are not just one, two, but multiple antennas, something like even 30 or 40 antennas
Gee whiz.
on top of
Wow.
on top of the resident premise. And it's not just the residents that are living just below the antennas. Everybody else who's living in close proximity, and if their house, their windows, or anything like their bedroom is going to be close to the antennas, they're going to get a lot of radiation, and that is a big problem. So in any populated place, in fact, so I have, like, some of these pictures are from India, but the same pictures, I have seen the similar situations in San Francisco,
too. I have too.
in New York, in LA, where population density is much higher as compared to, say, the Bay Area.
How close, how far away would you consider kind of safe for a antenna setup like that, like we just saw?
So now, so again, so it all depends on the power that is transmitted from the antenna. If they transmit less radiation, then probably 50 meters is what is safe. But if they transmit more radiation, it could be even, say, or like, it could be, say, something like even 0.2 miles. It depends, or 0.5 miles. It all depends. It all depends.
Man.
So in fact, there are a lot of, there's one of the report which says that 50 to 300 meters, I know it's meters, radiation is what is safe. This is one of the German reports. But then it's difficult to say exactly like what is the safe distance, because it all depends on what power is transmitted, what amplifiers are used, and the basically at the site, on the cell phone tower side.
So now we're coming up with 5K. What do you think?
5G radiation.
Oh, 5G.
Yes. So,
RT,
so
okay.
basically 5G, we have 2G radiation, then we had 3G radiation, then 4G came in.
Yeah.
Now 5G is going to come up. Now 5G is actually going to be very, very dangerous from health
terrible.
point of
It's
view.
terrible.
And the challenge with that is because these antennas will be in fact on the satellites.
Right.
And then those boosters will be there everywhere near your house. It's going to be on light poles, on like a lamp poles. It's going to be everywhere.
Are you listening, folks? Say that again. Light poles, lamps.
Yes, they're going to be, the boosters are going to be on lamp poles everywhere close to your house.
It's crazy.
And the problem is now, so initially with 2G or 3G, there were still places there where there was no cell phone coverage. But now that antennas are going to be throughout, basically around our Earth, planet Earth, that is going to be a problem, because now people do not even have that choice. But if they do not want the radiation, what do they do about it? They cannot go in space and do something about it, or they cannot move. There has to be some place where they can, recuperate from that damage. But now it's just, they don't have any control over it. So it's going to be extremely, extremely bad. And researchers around the world are extremely concerned about it.
What if you dress up like a robot, all metal, and walk out like that? Would that help? Just kidding. This is scary, but this is real.
Yes.
And I'm going to say this: our government's not really doing the things they should be doing to protect the populace like that.
Right.
And it's all about the money.
It is about the money. It is $1 trillion industry, right?
Really money.
And it's it's on the contrary. If you go online, and if you look at Steve was like basically some of the telecom providers and some of the telecom owners, Steve Wozniak, who is the co-founder of Apple,
Never heard of him.
So he was a co-founder of Apple, and and he mentioned that cell phones are not safe and it can cause cancer, and you can it's all over YouTube. And then even Richard Branson.
Yes.
From Virgin Mobile, even he has said in his videos, and this is available on YouTube as well, that he doesn't use a cell phone without an earpiece. So he never uses a cell phone directly close to his ear because he says it can cause cancer. So he uses these earphones, like earbuds. Yeah, exactly. So it's and again the wired ones, not the wireless
ones. We were just talking about Apple. We were just talking about that.
Right. So Apple has in fact recently, there was this report.
A week ago.
Exactly, just a week ago. Where basically a lot of scientists have said that it can cause, the AirPods, which are wireless, wireless, I would say headphones, they can even cause cancer.
Yikes.
And so that's something that people need to be, take precaution about. Like they need to, take precautions, and they need to listen what scientists are saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So that's something that but I guess I mean it's good that Apple has at least taken that as a note, and at least there are researchers who are talking about it, so that the users can start taking precautions now, and it's definitely time that we start taking precautions and we hear these warnings.
And it's funny what they did was kind of funny to me that they announced that the buds, the wireless buds, not just Apple, that's any wireless buds can do it. So what Apple did was they announced it, and then 3 days later they announced we got new earbuds for sale. That's crazy for $150. So we're letting you know you can cause it, but we're selling them 3 days later, and which I thought was kind of crazy. So folks out there, so wireless earbuds, you got your wireless watch, like we said before, that's hitting you. You got the earbuds and your phone, 3 things, your tablet. What's up? So right now, I think we have some more video, some more things that we're going to talk about now about the cell phone damage.
So just to give you a little bit, so one of the cases when I started working on cell phone radiation, this was a case at the Usha Kiran building, which was one of the swankiest building back in Mumbai. It was the first tallest building several years ago. And opposite to the building on the Vijay apartments, there were several cell phone tower antennas. And over a period of time, there were 6 cancer cases basically in the consecutive floors right next to the cell phone tower. So the cell phone tower,
across the street, or
it was across the street, exactly.
Yikes.
And if you look at this, I mean, people feel like, okay, it's maybe like what is a safe distance? As you probably asked me just a few minutes. In fact, you asked me a few minutes ago. Now this distance was roughly, I would say, I don't think it was more than 30 or 40 feet.
Yikes.
And there were, probably it was, it was 50 feet. And the antennas, if you look at the radiation pattern, the red one, so there's a certain radiation pattern of an antenna. It's not, the radiation is not the same in all directions. So there's a certain radiation pattern of an antenna. So the red lines indicate the radiation pattern. And if you see, it's like in the line of sight, those few floors, they are the ones that get maximum radiation.
Wow.
And there were 6 cancer cases in consecutive floors on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 2 on the 8th floor, and 1 on the 10th floor. And these were directly facing the cell phone antenna and approximately around the same height as the mobile phone towers that were installed on the Vijay apartments. And so this was, again, there were a lot of very influential people on this building.
Sure.
When they got health problems, they started complaining, and this was the first cases. In fact, one of the, I would say, very publicized case back in the 2009. And then initially they removed these towers, and these guys were able to remove these towers because they were powerful, and they removed these antennas, then they installed in another building, and there were now other people who had health problems around those areas.
Oh my goodness.
And I just wanted to talk about this one case so that people can at least see
that,
okay, if you have a cell phone antenna next to your house, and if you have seen any kind of health problems around it, and there's like, just make a note of it, and also probably talk about it, that if there's somebody like, if you see this, and it's not, and people sometimes say that, okay, why don't, if the cell phone antenna on the 7th floor, the first person on the first floor might say that I don't have any problems. Why are you guys on the 8th floor, 7th floor making noise? But that's because there's a certain radiation pattern of an antenna. It's not the same throughout. So if people feel like there is a cell phone, if they notice that they're having health problems and if they see there's a cell phone tower next to their house, just see the radiation. I mean, you can also get, anybody can get a radiation monitor. I mean, if you read the reports, if you come to know what is safe and from not safe, just see what is the radiation guideline. Is it high near your house? And then people can make a, like, they can also understand whether their problem is because of the antenna or is because of something genetically. What is it? At least they will understand what is the problem and what is causing their health problems. Definitely, if it is because of somebody else's antennas, that's not good for their health.
Well, what I would do to the person who said, I'm on the first floor, I would say, let's switch. I'll go on the first, you go on the eighth, and see what happens. What's different? And that's the best way you can do it. Do we have another slide?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes, we do. Okay.
Okay. Now, a lot of times, the telecom industry, they kept saying, "Oh, we have some kind of guidelines in place," and they said there is no conclusive evidence. There are no health problems with cell phone radiation. I mean, they've been doing that since like late 1990s. But then the problem has been that the guideline that I just mentioned to you, the ICNIRP guideline, that is only based on the thermal effects of radiation, which is the heating effect.
Right.
But then radiation, on the other hand, it can have two different kind of health impacts. One is one is the problem with the thermal effect, which is the heating, that we know that if something, like for example, you put food in a microwave oven, that's microwave radiation and your food gets hot because of friction of molecules. The other one is the non-thermal effect, which occurs at lesser power, but it can be even more harmful, which is
lesser could be more harmful.
I mean, lesser power. It can happen at lesser power. So it doesn't have to go to thermal effect.
That's what I'm saying.
It can be less, but it can be more harmful. And so what happens is this, so when I'm saying non-thermal means it can affect inside your cells, it can affect your DNA, it can affect at the molecular level. And that is a problem. So that's what I've been saying. So the telecom companies, they claim, or the guidelines right now that, most of the countries they've adopted, that's only based on the thermal effect. But the non-thermal effects are very, very harmful, and they also need to take into account those non-thermal effects when they set up these guidelines.
I'm scared to death, so should I get rid of my house and live in a cave? Like the cavemen. They lasted a long time. I mean, that's the only way I can feel safe,
It all depends on what is the radiation level. If you're living in, suppose, if you don't have any cell phone towers next to your house.
I do not.
Then then probably you don't need to worry about it. But if you're living in a densely populated area, or if you see there's a cell phone tower next to your house, then that is a problem.
Okay, now for the people who have a PS education like myself, what about the? Oh, you're laughing. Okay. What about the some of the TV cable stations that have their own antennas up on the roof? No danger, right?
When you're saying the cable?
The cable stations, like people will be asking the antennas that they have up there to get cable TV. They have the.
Oh, okay, got it. See the dish antenna. Okay, got it. So the dish
Let 'em
antenna
know.
is actually a different frequency.
Okay.
And with the dish antenna, it's not transmitting everywhere. It's a point-to-point communication. So that's not really that harmful, because what happens is it's like there's some dish antenna which is pointed towards the satellite or in some different antenna. So it's point-to-point communication. So that is not as harmful. But with cell phone towers, they're transmitting everywhere. So if I'm an antenna, I'm transmitting everywhere, so that I want every person to have cell phone communication. So it's kind of like going blind. You're saying that it's transmitting as much radiation as you. I mean, they transmit a lot of radiation so that cell phones can get that signal. So, but then what happens if this is my line of sight? Like if I'm an antenna, generally maximum radiation is in the horizontal plane, is 120 degrees. If I'm the antenna like this, you will get more radiation and people on this side will get less radiation. And if the same antenna was installed like this, then you will get less and the people over here will get more. And so, so anybody who's going to be very close to the antenna, they're going to get more radiation as compared to the people who will probably live 100 feet or 200 feet away.
So this is not a crazy statement or a crazy question. So, and you're laughing already, but let's say we have a lot of these antennas out there in forest areas. So the animals are getting affected by these radiation and stuff like that, and it just goes down a terrible cycle.
Yes, unfortunately, I think, I mean, that's what people, like a lot of people don't even talk about. But in fact, the bigger problem is the environmental impacts of it. Birds are affected, bees are affected, plants are affected. I mean, sparrow, which used to be a bird, which is a household bird. And I used to see as I was growing up, I used to see sparrows everywhere.
Yes, indeed.
Today in Europe, they've come under red list of endangered species. You will not see sparrows anywhere. Like, they've become endangered species.
I've been eating them, that's why.
And then bees, And then bees, also bees are in fact
we
very
need bees.
important. So bees, they use these electromagnetic radiation, like their own field, to navigate from one place to the other. And the cell phone radiation kind of breaks their navigation path.
Plan,
And in fact, so bees have also now, if you see, they are disappearing.
Yeah, they are.
And they are important for pollination. So the crops, the food that we eat, the vegetables and everything that we eat, that's important. Like bees are important for pollination, so that we all can get food. And I mean, we need to care about the bees, we need to care about the food, everything. And in fact, not many people probably know about this, and
No
this
one
was
brings
not
it up.
publicized. Exactly.
Yeah,
And in America, few years ago, roughly 10 years ago, the bee population had declined so much that they had to import the bees from Australia because it was affecting the crop population.
That's very true.
And what is the reason? Why were the bees disappearing?
Well, they were saying pesticides, but no one except yourself has brought it about the cell towers.
Yeah, so that's something
that
that
makes
we
a lot
need
of
to also
sense.
consider. Right.
Because they're very sensitive to be so little.
Right, exactly.
And I'm scared to death. I'm startled. Don't know what to say. We have any more slides coming up?
Yes.
Oh, we do? Oh.
So this one is a warning from the iPhone manual, which says keep the cell phone about 15 millimeter away from your body. But then why don't we really talk about that? Why do we always stick it close to our ear and stick it to our body all the time? The next one, and this was on the iPhone 4 manual.
Now, a lot of women put them in their bra.
Yes, that's very, very harmful. And in fact, if you see the cases of breast cancer are increasing significantly, men who keep the cell phones in the pant pocket, infertility rates are increasing significantly. I mean, I will talk about that also, but yeah, this is, you should not be wearing, I mean, the cell phone, it's not safe to keep the cell phone close to your body, and even the manuals talk about it. I mean, if the manufacturer, iPhone manuals, Blackberry manuals, all the generally the good, I mean, the companies, any big company, they have put these warnings in their manuals. The next one that I would like to talk about, Blackberry, even though it's become, nobody really uses Blackberry anymore, but it's interesting to see that this was a warning from page number 18 of their manual, which says keep the Blackberry device at least 0.98 inches away from your body, which is almost an inch away from your body.
Yikes.
And how many of us talk on the phone like this?
None.
1 inch away? Nobody. Right?
Yeah.
But why have they mentioned that? Because tomorrow, if there's a plethora, there's a big number of cancer cases or other health problems, they cannot, nobody can sue them, or they're just taking their own precautions. Because, and they might say, they will probably tomorrow come and say, but you see, we already warned you, we already have it on the manual. So you cannot put fingers on them and say that, hey, what is, your devices are creating these health problems. The next one, there is something else on the manual which says, keep the device away from the abdomen of pregnant women and lower abdomen of teenagers.
Wow.
And then it also says reduce the amount of time spent on calls.
How many minutes do you think?
Now, why would a cell phone company say that?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. They know something.
Right.
And they're not telling us.
Exactly. And this one I'm saying from 2000, this was in the Blackberry older manuals. Today, in fact, if you see, so a lot of people started making noise about these manuals.
Glaucoma?
Glaucoma is one of the kind of cancers, and acoustic neuroma is another kind of cancer that there are a lot of studies where they say that the people are having those health problems. In fact, the World Health Organization also had also in fact designated cell phone radiation as a possible class 2B carcinogen through the research organization, which is the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And on 31st May 2011, they came up with this report where they found evidence of increase in glioma and acoustic neuroma, which is, so glioma is a type of brain cancer, and acoustic neuroma is related with the hearing, with increased risk of cell phones.
Can you scare me anymore? I mean, why are we next to these cell phones?
Right, and I mean, so the World Health Organization already found this in 2011, and there was a lot of noise around that time, and still not many people are aware of it. The public is at least not aware of it, and these studies are not coming out in the open, which it should be.
I agree. We have any more?
Yes.
Oh.
If you want, I can skip through this one.
No. Go ahead.
So,
take your time.
So some of the common health problems that that come, people face because of cell phone radiation are sleep disturbance, concentration problem, memory issues, palpitations of the heart, cardiovascular problems, buzzing in the head. Now, these are definitely common problems.
I have all of that.
And people generally tend to say that, okay, these are like common problems and it's not because of cell phone radiation, or it could be something else. Now, I'm not saying yes, definitely it's possible that it's because it could be because of your day-to-day activities also. But there are studies where they've said that these problems do occur because of cell phone radiation, and in fact it affects the electromagnetic signals of the brain, and which is why people tend to have these health problems.
Oh my goodness! You have another slide here?
Yeah.
Oh, this is my favorite.
So this one is basically a study on the DNA damage by Professor Henry Ley from University of Washington. Now the research that I'm going to show you is from 1995, but they have done multiple studies, repeated studies, where they've seen similar results. The first one that you see over here is a ball of DNA that any size, if you run a same side of DNA on a gel, you will see it as a ball of DNA. With X-ray, we all know it causes DNA strand breaks. I mean, everybody's aware of that already. And you can see that as a comet of DNA on the second diagram. And in the third one, they've taken cell phone and you basically use the same radiation that a cell phone transmits, which is legally allowed by the government.
Right.
And they found that there was a comet of DNA, which indicates that there's some DNA damage. I mean, it's not exactly as obvious as the X-ray radiation, because we all know it's very harmful, but it shows that it shows that there's a comet of DNA, which indicates there's some kind of DNA damage that is taking place. And we all know that even during the normal course of our day, there is some amount of damage that takes place on the DNA,
sure.
but our body keeps repairing that.
Sure.
And the problem is like when the rate of damage is more than the rate at which the body can repair, that's when it retains these mutations, and it can cause problems like cancer or other health problems.
Yikes.
So I feel like this, and so there is a lot of studies where they found single and double-stranded DNA breaks with cell phone radiation, and within the government guidelines. So definitely, I mean, it says that there is some problem. It's not, you cannot say there's no conclusive evidence or there is no health problem. These are research studies, repeated research studies, where people are finding these health problems. And if they're seeing DNA strand breaks, then there is something that's happening to our body.
Do we have another? Oh, this is, ladies and gentlemen, pay close attention to this one. I know we're getting short on time, but show the last one with the child here.
So this one, I mean, as I mentioned, for kids are in fact more prone to radiation, and parents have been giving cell phones and cell phone, tablets with wireless communication
for children
to kids. Yes.
Yikes. And
kids are more prone to radiation because their brains are thinner, so the radiation penetration is more deeper. And this was done by Dr. Dr. Gandhi from the US, and he basically found that if an adult keeps a cell phone close to the ear, the radiation penetration is up to 25% of the brain. For a 10-year-old, it's up to 50% of the brain, and for a 5-year-old, it's up to 75% of the brain.
Goodness.
And which is why I would highly recommend parents to not give their cell phones or tablets to young kids, because it is really dangerous for young.
And you see that every day.
I see
you
that
see every single day. I go to the mall or wherever I'm in a car, and I look over somebody in a car seat. I saw a child in a baby seat. Couldn't have been more than 4 years old playing with a tablet.
Right.
I was driving last week. Yikes.
And parents give cell phones to their 1 or 2 year old child also sometimes, and that's not good.
That's true.
Now this one I think is a very important study. There are a lot of infertility cases that have been coming up with around globally, in fact. And so this research is that I'm going to show right now is by Dr. Agarwal from Cleveland Clinic. He is a reproductive researcher at Cleveland Clinic. And what he found out that people who use cell phones for more than 4 hours per day or keep the cell phones in their pant pocket, their sperm count goes down significantly, their motility and the viability and the normal morphology of the sperms, that decreases significantly.
Yikes.
And that is something that people need to be concerned about,
I think
because that can really affect your fertility, men's fertility. Now, if you look at the diagram, the purple one, the top line that you see, that is the levels or the different parameters for those who do not use a cell phone. And the blue one is the one where people use cell phones for more than 4 hours per day. Now, if you look at the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th parameter, there are different levels as depending on the people who are using the cell phone for different durations. And as you see over here, the sperm count, that is 5th, sixth is motility, seventh is viability, and the eighth is percent normal morphology. That has dropped significantly.
Yes, it has.
And with increased use of cell phones, and which is why I would like to again these studies have been repeated over and over, and I would highly recommend any couple that they want to conceive, in fact anybody in fact, and young teenagers who keep cell phones in their pant pockets or in the hip pockets, try not to keep it close to your body. It can really cause health problems, and with more and more apps that you have on your phone, with more wireless and Wi-Fi stuff and Bluetooth, you're just increasing the amount of radiation that's going into your body. So I would highly recommend that people take precaution about it. It's already late. There are a lot of people around the world who are having problems. If you see everywhere, you see IVF clinics, Planned Parenthood, and people need to take precautions before it's very late.
Well, Neha Kumar, I'd like to thank you. You scared me to death. I think a lot of people out there in the audience, get your mother, father, grandmother, uncles, aunt and uncles, listen to the show. Play it back, play it slow, because we all have cell phones. And Neha's just informed us of the dangers of our cell phone. I'm looking at my cell phone, and it's going to stay way far away. I'm going to leave it in the car to feel safe. Neha, I can't thank you enough for coming out. We met in LA, and she came up we were filming at a car show down there at the LA Convention Center, and just passionately explained her feelings on the cell phone, and we kind of listened, and I went, this needs to get on the air, and that's why you're here. Can't thank you enough. Much luck to you. You've informed me, and I know you've informed the viewers out there, and good luck where you're going in your life, and can I have $1 when you get rich and famous? That's all I'm saying. So this has been Eddie Hazzard. Kick back, relax, have a good time, and stay informed.